Hello, good morning, and we are back again. This is Dapsy Chess. This is the next gen tournament that happened 6th February. I said I was going to do some recap on this tournament. I think I've only done one round. It's a lot of stuff's going on. But here we are. We have the second recap, the second round of the tournament. We're going to go through this very quickly. So you're going to have to bear with us. So in this game, we have Tunde Onakoya on the white side against Grandmaster Kenny Solomon of South Africa. Of course, Tunde Onakoya of Nigeria. So let's see how this game went. Inside of the move e4, d6, d4, g6. That's the modern defense. When you combine the d6 and the g6 pawn push, that's called the modern. If it was the knight f6 you moved out, that would be the Prague defense. So let's keep going. Knight to c3, c6. Kenny Solomon is being very flexible here. He's not really trying to do a whole lot, just trying to push his pawns forward and see what kind of setup white is going for. Normally in this position, I like to go for the bishop to e3, f3, queen d2, castle long. That's the version I like to play. But anyway, c6 is played, and of course, the idea of the c6 is it's a multi-purpose move. Very soon, black is going to have to play b5, b4, trying to attack the the white king once the white king castles to the queen side. And of course, by moving the pawn to c6, you give your queen the possibility of coming to either c7 or b6 or even a5, as the case may be. So let's keep going. We have bishop to e3, knight f6, f3, stopping the knight from harassing the bishop on e3. Yeah, you don't want the bishop to be harassed on e3. b5, now that's what I said about the move c6. With the move c6, you combine that move with the move b5. The idea is to go for a quick pawn push to try to make things a little bit of comfortable for whites on the queen side. Queen d2, knight b d7. The knight is going to come to b6 and then c4 to try to put pressure on these two guys. So you always have to watch out for making a move like, for example, knight ge2, because once the knight lands on c4, he attacks your bishop, he attacks your queen, he attacks your pawn. You would have to come to c1, and I think knight takes e3 is always a good idea for black, because without the dark square bishop, white can have a lot of difficulties in this kind of positions. So queen d2 is played, g4. Immediately, Tune makes the move g4. Not a bad move, trying to start some operations on the king side. So after the move g4, knight b6. So we have to be very careful, like I said, moving the knight to e2 right now. Actually, in this position, bishop d3 would be a good move, and then you can go ahead with the move knight ge2, maybe knight g3, and then h4, h5. That's a very possible move for white. Of course, you want to castle long, bring your rooks and centralize your rooks. So um this in this position, g5 was, I really don't like the move g5 here. I think it's very important that we keep the position as flexible as possible. I probably prefer the move h4. Let him castle first before you start rolling out pawns. I think I like the move h4 here. So g5, there was no really need for g5, because in some situations you might even need to bring this bishop here to exchange off the bishop that's about to get to g7, whereby making the h6 and the j7 square very, very weak. So g5 is played by today. We have knight time h5, queen to f2, another move that I wasn't so keen about. I wasn't sure of the idea behind that move. It's very important that white sticks to the main plan. Bishop d3 is still a move I would play, followed by knight e2 and then knight to g3. If it captures, I captured back with the h pawn. I have the h file, and white looks good. So queen f2 is played, bishop to g7, a3, stopping the move b4. I don't know if this was such a threat right now, because b4 does really, yeah, it kicks the knight back, but you can easily reroute your knight through the square, or even, I don't know. Yeah, knight here, knight here. So knight to c4 is played immediately, takes the knight, takes back, knight ge2, rook to b8. Now that we have the b file open, it makes a lot of sense to start to put a lot of pressure on that b file. So at this point, white is a little behind, a little behind. Black already has some play. There's a reason the rook went to b8. right? And there's a reason the bishop is on g7. You could see that they have a kind of certain connection on the b2 square. And of course, the queen can always come to b6 to put pressure on that b2 square in case white decides to castle long. I don't think castling long is going to be such a good idea for white right now. It might just be the best of the evils, but and it's going to be hard for white to come up with some very strong plan. And castling to the king side is not, it's still possible for white pieces. So rook b1 is played. We have queen to a5. Castles get away from the pin. Bishop h3, putting pressure on the rook on f1. Rook goes to d1, centralizing the rook. Castles. Now it's okay for for black to castle. Now that he has been able to get his pieces on some very good squares, the rooks are connected, the queen is active. So pretty much you can just rook b7, rook to b2, put pressure, and white has a very easy, black has a very easy plan in such situations. So we have knight to g3, takes, captures back. Bishop goes back to d7 because you don't want to lock the door, and then queen g3 traps the bishop. We don't want tricks like that. So king to g2. Now it's going to be very difficult for white to still come up with some kind of planning. I think the only plan white has is if he can get his rooks doubled on the h file and then put pressure on the h7, that would be really good. But you always still have to always think about defending the pawn on b2. The pawn on b2 is, it is, I don't know. It's a target. It's something white has going to have to be worried about. The pawn on b2 is something white is going to have to be worried about. So, king g2 is played. f5 makes a lot of sense. Trying to open up the f file, number one. Trying to open up the position pretty much because he has the two bishops. Whenever you have the bishops, you want to open up the position. So here, it captures back. It plays pawn push. And the idea is take, you cannot take back, you cannot take because you're hanging here. You're hanging on the d7 square. So e5 is played. Rook goes back to f7, f4. Now, this doesn't just do anything. This just drops a pawn. Because after okay, bishop g4 first, the idea is to move the bishop away anytime the pawn captures so that you don't have anything to capture on the d7 square. Tony plays rook to h1. I think rook f1 was a better square here to keep around that d3 square. Of course, Ken went on to get a pawn, takes back. Black is up a pawn. Black doesn't really have any compensation for that pawn. And the position is getting open. So it's not looking so good for the white pieces right now. So bishop to d4, trying to exchange the pieces. Bishop takes, queen takes back. e5, very strong move, very strong move. Now you cannot take here because of the weak f3 square. So if this rook was on f1 or maybe on e1, then this move would have been impossible. Then it won't be so bad. It won't be so bad. So let's keep going. Let's keep going. So queen takes c4, rook rook b to f8. The opening up of this position can only be beneficial to the person that has the bishop, period. And of course, the king being on g2 with no pieces around it and the pawns around it very shaky is not going to help white in this situation. Rook a f2 f8 is played. Rook f1, where the rook should have been in the first place. So king to g7 takes on e5. Now, the idea of king to g7 is to get away from the pin, because by getting away now the rook is active. So takes on e5, and that was a blunder because bishop f3 check is just crushing now. We have all these light squares around the white king. That is really, really bad. So here, bishop f3 check is played. King goes to h2. Queen takes e5. Queen takes e5. Rook attacks the queen. Rook e1. We have queen to d6. Not a good move here. Not a good move. You had a better move here. Queen g5 looks very strong. You're threatening some very evil stuff like queen check here. Very strong move. So queen d6 is played. We have rook f2. Another not so good move because now you're pretty much just shutting this king out. Rook f4 is a very strong move. Rook f4. If pawn takes, rook takes, threatening this very discovered, and there's going to be made on h1. Of course, Kenny didn't do that. He went for the f5 square. So rook f5, we have rook check, queen takes. I don't know why that, maybe probably time pressure, I think. Yeah, time pressure. Tunde had like 6 seconds left, and Kenny still had like 1 minute. So check, moves the king to g8, and after this, Tunde resigned. Um, what to say about this game? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I can say that White's strategy didn't really go out the way expected. White's strategy didn't work out well. Now he has to be worried. He has to do something about the rook check, checkmate here. So let's look at the next game. The next game by let's see. Yeah, the next game was Ferdinand versus Joshua Collas. Tercy versus, by the way, Ferdinand is the current Nigeria national champion. I think he's about 15, 16 years old. So let's see how this game went. So knight f3 is played, e5. We have e3, knight to f6, c4, putting pressure on the pawn on c4, on d5, e6. We have knight to c3, developing the pieces. Bishop goes to d6. We have d4, claiming some squares in the central squares. Claiming some very, very, very vital squares. d4 is played. We have c6. Bishop to d3, getting the bishop to the most important diagonal. Bishop e2 doesn't work much in this setup. Anytime you have the g6 situation, you want the bishop to move e2. But without the g6, your bishop is best placed on the d3 square because then it puts a lot of pressure on the h pawn. So we have knight b d7, white castles, black castles, b3. White is just taking his time. It's just taking his time to get his pieces to good squares. And black setup is not bad either. Black is going to be looking to make a move like e5 because after the several takes, the bishop comes into the game, and black has a very easy game. This position is a position we actually also see in the I think it's the Slav. Yeah, I think we see this position in the Slav. I don't know if either is a semi Slav or whatever, but this is one position that we come across. So queen to e7 is played. We have bishop to b2. Now bishop a3. I wasn't really sure about that move, but this is a normal maneuver in situations like this. But I wasn't just sure that if this maneuver was good for black in this position. This is a normal maneuver here. Bishop getting off the bishop and then trying to make sure this pawn doesn't move. So I don't know if I just don't think this maneuver works in this situation. Why? Because I think it's more important to look for the e5 push. Because with the e5 push, you're threatening pawn push. If it takes, for example, e5, it takes, you take, it takes, your bishop takes, and then your bishop comes into the game. It just looks very good for the black pieces. So bishop a3 is played, captures back. Queen to e2. I would have preferred queen to c2. What's the idea of queen to c2? I want to put pressure on h7. Of course, I want to push the pawn. Take, bishop takes, knight back, bishop comes back here. One of the problems black has in this position is this bishop on c8. So it's very important black figures out what is going to do with that bishop. And one of the reasons I also prefer the queen on c2 is because I can always throw this knight to e5 without having to worry about the bishop g4 coming to pin the knight to the queen. So queen e2 is played, captures back with the bishop. We have queen goes to e7, e4 is played, e5. E5 is a very important move. Number one, whenever you have a light square bishop, you want to put your pawns on the dark square so that the bishop can have a lot of possibilities to move around. Because if the pawns are on the same color of your bishop, then it's going to hinder your bishop from really doing much in the game. So d5 is played, captures back, captures back, knight to b6. Now what we have here, let's just take count. Black's minor pieces are not doing the best right now. Knight is good. The white bishop here is really good. Knight here is looking good as well. I think this looks good for white, even if it's a slight looking good, because white has moves like rook fd1, rook ac1. So any capture you want to capture of the rook, threatening the pawn on e5. So rook fd1 is played. We have bishop to g4, h3. You have to kick that bishop. Bishop goes back to h5. I don't like that move, g4. I don't think it's necessary. I think I prefer queen to e3. Yeah, just getting away from the pin. I mean, from the pin on e2 because there's another pin on d1. I think I like queen to e3, and then with the move, I like rook to d2. Getting away from all the pins. And with the bishop here, the bishop might really just run into some difficult situations if it doesn't take the knight. Because if the bishop goes to g6, I don't know what the bishop is going to be doing on g6. So, but instead, in this position, g4 was played. Bishop goes to g6, knight to h2. I think the idea of knight to h2 is to come to f1 to e3 and then to f5. Possibilities, possibilities. And of course, if white can double his rook on the d file, I think white is not looking bad in this position, really. White is not looking bad. So knight h2 is played. We have rook to d8, rook f d8. Now, in this position, instead of the knight move, I think I would have preferred to just move the rook up so that if it doubles, I want to make sure I have a piece on d5, not a pawn. Because once this pawn captures, the bishop is going to come to life. I think this is a better setup for white. And then you can start thinking about bringing your knight to h2 to f1 to e3, and then this looks really good for the white pieces. So g4 goes back, knight h2, rook d8, rook knight f1. Of course, it's not going to let you move your knight to e3 and you capture the knight. You have a piece on d5, and then you're like, you're Superman. It's not going to let you do that now. It won't let you do that now. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Now, this is a problem for white all of a sudden. We have an open position. We are playing against the bishop. All he has to do is just open up the position. Just open up the position, and white is going to have a lot of difficulties. So f5, that's exactly what you did. F5 right away. But I don't think I'm going to put f5 right away. I'll probably move the rook to c8. Make sure all my pieces in the position in case I want to do anything. So f5 is played here. We have knight to g3, f4, knight goes to e4, queen h5. This is where the problem starts. The f5 is about to get opened. The pawn on h3 is under attack thanks to the g4 move that was made earlier. So rook d3, defending the h3 pawn and also threatening to double the rooks on the d file. So let's see what happened after that. Exactly. You want to open up the position. You have to open up the position. You have to open up the position. Captures with the queen, with the bishop. Queen goes to f1. And the idea is, of course, to try to get the queen to g2 and protecting this pawn. Probably king h2 and then maybe rook rook g1. Would it be a possibilities for the white pieces? Just to try to stay in the game. So rook goes to c8. Hey, c2 is calling. C2 is calling. King h2. There you go. Rook to c2. Now there's voila. There's a lot of problems here. After this is going to be it's just going to go down for black, for white really quickly. So rook to c3 says, okay, I can't afford to let you stay there. I want to exchange you off. Takes back. Bishop gets relocated to another diagonal, a very beautiful one. The pawn is coming to protect. The rook might come all the way here. Rook can go to g6, and this is possible. There's just a whole lot of possibilities here for the black pieces, thanks to the nature of the position. It's an open position. When you have an open position, your bishops are really, really good. When you have a knight, when you have a close position, the knights are better. So in this situation, black is just in the driver's seat. So let's see how much resistance white can have before he actually throws in the towel. So rook to e1, attacking the pawn on e5. He says, well, if you want my pawn, you can have it. But while you're at it, can I have your knight on c3? He says, no, I need my knight as well. I got to keep my knight to e4. Pressure on f2. Wow, this is going to be tough, really, really tough for the white pieces. Pressure on f2. King g1 defending f2. Queen goes to h5. What's the point of queen h5? This threat is still possible. No, this is not possible. Oh, check here picks that. Yeah, got it. Queen h5. Pawn push, queen check, king move, bishop snaps, the pawn of the board, pawn push, queen check, and it is all over. It is all over. What to say about this game? I think White had its chances. And one thing about chess is, the timing of your pieces, you know, it's very important. Getting your pieces to the best squares on time is very important. And like I said, if white had doubled the rooks instead of moving the knight to h2, it will still have a pawn on e4, which shuts the bishop out. You have a possibility of getting apples on d5, and I think that's just a good position for white. All right, let's get next to the next game. The next game we have is between the Great Watu. I like calling him the Great Watu. Wat is a very special guy for me. You know, he's such an amazing fellow. Watu from Kobese and Orlando Husband, another very strong player from um, Barbados. Yeah, I hope it's right. Another strong iron from Barbados. So the game started with the move e4. We have c5, knight f3, g6. This is some kind of accelerated dragon. I don't know. It's a Sicilian, but then you're going for the early g6 without the d4, without the d4, c takes, knight takes, and stuff. So let's see how this game went. d4 is played, takes with the knight, knight f6, knight c6, bishop to e2. Very conservative, just trying to take it easy. No aggression. This is very like the old Watu. The old Watu will throw everything at you. But bishop to e2, bishop g7, knight, very conservative. Like, I don't want trouble. Let me just put my pieces where, you know, just play safe. So knight goes to b3. We have knight f6, knight c3, castles. We have castles. E6. This position has been seen so many times. Now we have this is totally now we have a Sicilian dragon, and this is more like a position and approach to the Sicilian dragon. White is not going to just go ahead and mate black with the bishop h6, point d2, So this is more of like, let's play positional chess. So rook to e1 is played, bishop to e6, bishop goes to f1, rook to c8. It's very important for black to keep putting its pieces on the right square. Now, this is one thing I also always mention. Whenever you play any opening, you must understand and know where your pieces belong. Now, these are the typical positions for all the pieces for black when it comes to dragon. And white at some point in time may need to bring his bishop to e3, queen to d2, and rook to d1. But bishop e3 is going to allow knight coming to g4. Maybe we want to play h3 first, not f3. We want to play h3 first. Then bishop to e3, queen to d2, rook to d1. And then we would like to play f4. Yeah, that was a possibility. We would like to play f4, not f3, f4. So knight goes to d5, immediately enters the d5 square, disalign black from playing d5 himself. And I think if black can play d5, I think black is pretty much going to freeze position a little bit. So it plays knight to d5, trying to stop the pawn from advancing. So we have knight to knight to e5, a4. I don't know the idea behind that move, a4. I'll probably just play h3 here with the idea of f4, f5, a4 is played. Like I said, this is more of it's a positional approach to this position. Of course, b5 is not possible, so I wasn't really going to play a4 right now. Like I said, I prefer the move h3. So we have knight to c4, pawn goes to a5, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop goes to c2. We have c3, making sure this bishop and the knight don't connect on the b2 square. Very important. b5 is played. Knight goes to d4, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn, keeping an eye on the weak c6 square. Bishop goes to d7. We have a4. Wow, that pawn is moving. That pawn is moving. That pawn is moving. We have a4. a6. b4 is played here. Not a good move by Orlando. Why is that not a good move? Oh, there is knight c6 is very strong. Knight c6, if it takes, pawn takes, if rook takes, knight c6 take out. Oh, there's a double. Is there a double attack? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But anyway, let's see what happened here. So queen goes to b3, threatening to win the knight or the pawn on b4. Takes on c3, takes back. Knight goes to b6. We have bishop to e3, developing the last minor piece. was very important for white to get all these pieces of the game as quick as possible. So, and the knight, sorry, the bishop on e3 has been there since the game started. So you want to make sure all your pieces are on the best squares possible. So bishop to e3 is played. We have queen to c7, putting pressure on c3. c4 is played. Wow, interesting. What's the point of c4? What's the point of c4? What if he captures? I think just going to pin him and just cheat him, get something off him. So c4 is played. We have rook f to e8. We have rook f to c1. I like white's position here. Rook b8. Knight goes to b5. Queen goes to d8. Rook comes to b1. Rook a. Of course, because there's this bishop right there looking at us. We don't want to have to stay there for too long. So bishop takes, pawn takes, knight goes to d7. White is just crushing here. Knight goes to c5. Rook takes, crushing here. White is just crushing here. White is just crushing here. Takes, bishop takes, pawn push. How in the okay? Yeah, I think white blundered. Excuse me. I think white blundered. That's why black was able to win this game. Pawn push, queen takes, pawn push. I like the move g3. You don't want any. Wow, g3 is played. Queen goes to e5, threatening nothing. Bishop to g2. Bishop takes. In this position, right? In this position, I would have, and let me say something about this position. Whenever you have hanging pieces, it's something bad will happen, guaranteed. The rook is an hanging piece. Every of white's pieces is defended except the rook on f1. I mean, sorry, except the rook on b1. So it's not a coincidence that bishop f2 check, you know, looks to exploit that piece that's hanging. So the question is, what would have been a good move for the white pieces? I like rook d3. I'm sorry, I like rook b3. Rook b3, or he's even suggesting queen to f4 is a possible move. No, I don't like queen f4. Oh, queen f4 is just crushing though. Because after queen f4, if you move away from this diagonal, I'm just going to get a queen and then you just busted. So, but anyway, bishop g2, bishop f2 check, king moves, bishop goes back. That's very important. Now rook comes to f1. Rook to d8. Queen goes to c. I don't have to take it, Watu. It doesn't have to take it. So queen goes to d6. Rook to c1. The idea is to takes back and then pin the queen to the king. I'm sure it's not gonna let that happen. It says like, not today. I can let you do that. King g7. And after king g7, oh, Watu lost on time. They must have been in some kind of time scramble in this situation. So Watu lost on time in this game. I think this was a game. It was completely winning. All right, let's get next to the next game. The next game. The next game we have a Ekunke Goodness from Nigeria playing against Justice Williams from USA, New York. Ekunke had the white pieces here. So let's see how this game went. D4, knight f6. It's interesting. Ekunke now plays the d4 opening. In the past, he's always been playing the e4. It's really nice to see this boy just really keep improving and working on his game. Thanks to all the guys, all the team that has been supporting him. And these are some of the bright um, players, for Nigerian chess. So d4 is playing knight f6. We have knight f3, b6, queen's Indian setup. c4, bishop to b7, knight to c3, e6. a3 is a very important move here. You don't want this bishop coming to pin your knight to the king. Guy, what's the big deal? The big deal is about the fight of the e4 square. We have the black knight on e4. We have the black bishop on e4. So you don't want the bishop to come to b4 to take away the only piece that you have that is fighting for the e4 square. So a3 is a possible move here. Actually, a3 is the most played move in this position. So a3 is played. That means this boy knows his opening. d5, we have bishop to g5. I'm not sure bishop to g5. I'm not sure. It's not bad, but I prefer bishop to f4, e3, then rook to c1. But anyway, bishop to g5 is played and captures e3. I want to capture the pawn back. Bishop takes, castles, knight b d7, rook to e1, a6, rook to c1. I'm not sure of the idea behind the move rook to c1. I'm not sure of the idea. I mean, the move rook to, yeah. I probably would have preferred this rook to be on d1 instead of c1. So maybe move something like queen e2, rook d1. So that I'm pretty much trying to discourage black from making a move like c5. Because once it does that, I can spring to action and start looking to cause some mayhem on the d file. So rook c1 is played. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. That's the c5 move. c5 is played. d5 takes both the bishop, takes the bishop on e7, takes back, queen to d6, knight to f4. What do I think about this position? I think black's position is freer. I think black's position is freer, slightly better maybe, because I mean the rooks are already connected. Think about this. Um, the rooks are already connected, right? The knight is developed, the queen is developed, the bishop is developed. It's not just developed, looking at this king's position. And of course, you also have to consider the fact that white has two knights against the bishop and the knight. I'm going to say it's an open position. I'm not even going to put any semi on this open position. It's an open position, period. So, queen goes to c6. Pretty much telling white, you're going to have to worry about this long diagonal for a very long time. Queen to c6 is played, e4. We have rook f8 to d8. Very important we bring this rook to d. I think this rook belongs on d8, and then the other rook belongs on e8. So we have knight d5. When you see an outpost, go for it. So knight d5 is played. Rook goes to e8, getting all your pieces to good squares. It's interesting now. I say this a lot in my videos. Let's just imitate what the strong players do. They can't be wrong. Getting all your pieces on good squares. So in this situation, what was played here? Okay, I had no clue what happened in this game. Oh, lost on time. White lost on time here. I actually can say probably it was based on network because I mean yes, probably it was based on network because there is really nothing wrong with White's position here. White doesn't look bad at all. But now I'm going to try to get away from the pin on the D file and probably maybe look to play mimic a move like B4 so that to try to just put pressure on this pawn, try to get some play before this bishop on b7 comes to life. All right, let's look at the last game. The last game, which was between Farai Mandiza and Tani Tolua. This has always be a battle when these people play. So Farai was on the white side, start of the move d4, knight f6, c4 is played, e6. We have knight f3. We have c5, inviting the Benoni opening. But I said, well, I'm not so keen about playing the Benoni right now. Just keep your theory till another time. So what do I mean by Benoni? Normally d5 is played here. Actually, take. We can either go to the Benko. I mean, we can either. Sorry, I'm going to go back. So take. Yeah. No, you don't want to take here. You actually want to play b5, going into the Benko immediately. Yes. You have to know this opening. If you don't, bad things can happen very quickly. But Farai said I'm not ready to go into any kind of theoretical debate. I'm just going to play my knight to c3 JJ and see how this works out. So takes back, bishop to b4, e3, castles, bishop to e2, d5, captures back, castles. White is good, black is not looking bad either. We didn't with an IQP, an isolated queen's pawn. With the isolated queen's pawn, you always have to know the plan. Whenever you have an isolated queen's pawn, what's the plan if you have an isolated queen's pawn? Because your opponent is going to try and blockade that pawn, restrain that pawn, and destroy that pawn. What's going to be your plan? Your plan is going to be able to create some attacking possibilities, most especially on that king. Because if you don't create that attack, this pawn with time, this pawn is going to be captured. With moves like bishop to f3, knight to e2, knight to f4, this pawn is going to get under heavy fire and get captured. So knight c3 is played, knight c6 is played, sorry. Bishop to f3, pressure on the pawn on d5. Bishop goes to e6, queen to b3. Can I see it's all about that pawn now? Rook is coming to d1. Takes back. Now we both have AQP, so we're good. Nothing to worry about. Takes back with a pawn. Queen goes to a d7. looking at this position, what's assessment? It's very, very close. White has the two bishops. Hey, white has the two bishops. I won't say it's the open position really because of the close nature or the locked nature. I'm not going to say the closed nature, the locked nature of the pawns. So we're not really going to say it's an open position necessarily, but still looks like white has a number of possibilities, right? White has a number of possibilities. So bishop a3 is played, rook to c8, rook to d1. I don't know why rook to d1. Chibu Agbero Kawasibi to defend the c pawn. But anyway, maybe it's saying something we don't see. So rook to d1 is played. B6, rook f to e1. Rook goes to c7, trying to double the rooks, put pressure on c3. Rook e3, protecting the pawn, also trying to double the rooks on the e file, I guess. So rook to c, rook c, rook a to c8, h3. Very important move. Lufthansa. You want to make sure there is a luft. You don't want any move to come to you as a surprise. Oh, I didn't see. We don't want that. That's not going to be our portion. Oh, I missed that move. We don't want that stuff. So h3 is played here. h6, bishop to b4. Trying to tell him, why not just come and attack me? Because now if you attack, just going to pull this back, this becomes a weakness. So be careful. He plays knight to e8. Now, that's one good thing about knights. In positions like this, knight can just dance around, dance, 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 and dance. And keep dancing until they say good square, and then they occupy. And once they occupy, then there's going to be problems. So knight goes to e8, a4. Now, the idea is to play a5. If you take, I'm going to take, right? And then I'm going to have the c7 to myself for a long time. And then the pawn on a7 is going to be a lot of weakness because you can't advance the pawn because I'm just ready to pick the pawn. There's my coin. There's my bishop. My rook can always move to that part of the board. My bishop can always move to this part of the board. So a4 is played. Knight just goes right back to f6. That means, Tani was just checking out what Farai had in mind. So knight go back to f6. We have bishop to e2. Knight goes to c e8. It's interesting. Sorry, e4. It's interesting that immediately the bishop left. Sorry, excuse me. It's interesting that immediately the bishop left the f3 square, keeping the knight away from the e4 square, the knight jumped immediately. Although after the jump, he's attacking 3 times. 1, 2, 3. We're defending 3 times. 1, 2, 3. But we have to be careful for moves like a5. Because once the bishop goes, there's going to be voila. There's going to be a lot of problems on the square. So what does white do here? Bishop to b5 gains the tempo first. King has to move. Bishop a6. Now the bishops are going crazy. Going crazy. Rook goes to b8. Queen goes to a3. What's the threat? I think the threat is f3. So if you move here, I'm just going to come here and say thank you very, very much. Win an exchange. I'm sure Tani saw that. Tani's, wow. Tani didn't see it all. He plays queen to f6. f3 is played. Queen goes to g5. Hitting on this rook, threatening bishop takes h3. And we just move the rook back here, then we're going to have another move to worry about. We're going to have to worry about the move knight to g3. So how did Farai make this move? It goes knight to e2, rook to f1. What am I talking about? Rook to e2, knight g3, tempo. Now it gets his tempo back. Like, wait a minute, I can give tempos too. Queen goes to d8. Now he wins an exchange. Says not so fast. Wins an exchange. And I think it's just a matter of time. This position is going to be over. So queen e3. But this is one thing though. A one position is you still have to make it count. Wow, that was a blunder. Captures because you cannot take here because I'm going to just say hi and that's going to be curtains right there. So rook takes on d5. Oh, it took. Trust Tani. Tani will always go for, unbalanced positions. Just trying to make you work for your money. So bishop takes, king to f2. King goes to h8. It's very important to move away from any possible checks, either, especially on this diagonal, because the bishop might not stay long on that square. So we have rook to c7, putting pressure on the weak pawn on a7. King goes to g8. E4. I mean, sorry, F5. I like that move. We have possibilities like this. I like that move. F5. And also shorten this knight out. This knight's going to be very, very careful. Of course, you can still come to F3 and then go to G5. Um, Rook to F7 is played. Check. King moves. Queen threatens checkmate. This is what we call checkmate threat win material. Bishop F7. King attacks the knight. Nowhere to go. Knight takes back. Rook takes A7, A5, and H4. Force this knight away from the square. I mean, if the rook has to stay on F8, the bishop is pinned to the king. The knight doesn't have a lot of squares to go to. I don't know what else black is going to be playing for here. Captures, it moves. Rook attacks the other pawn. Captures the pawn. Queen attacks, double attack, attacking the rook and the pawn on F6. And then we have a pass pawn here that you know, is just going to keep rolling down. Check, check, check. Um, attacking the bishop. If the bishop moves away somewhere, we have queen check and wins the knight. After this move, Tani Tolua resigned. Well, this is the recap of the second round, and this was a 10-round event. It is well. It is well. Okay, hopefully I have some time to be able to um bring the other. I might not be able to show all the games, but if I see some other interesting rounds, I think we should see. I will definitely do it. But and if I can do all, yeah, nothing wrong with that. I'm going to try and make that happen as well. Okay, it's and that's it for now, and hope to see you all soon. Take care. God bless, and stay safe.